Hello there, Internet. Mogwai here, and I got a set review for you guys today because the entire Shining Revelry set has been leaked. It's in the website called Pokemon Zone. I'm going to have this link in the description down below. You can look at all the new cards that we're going to be getting, and I want to make a video to just talk about them. Generally, I like to stay spoiler-free, but I think I've become a little bit of a dinosaur with this mentality because, you know, this is pretty much common knowledge at this point, and it would be kind of like negligent of me, or negligible English, for me to not really discuss the cards and tell you guys what my first impressions are, what I feel the cards that are going to be most impactful are, and also the ones that are going to be bad, and anything else that falls in the middle, as this set has a lot of very exciting aspects to it. One of the most exciting ones for me is the fact that I do believe non-EX decks are going to be significantly stronger. And that means that deck building possibilities are going to overall enhance because you're not going to be generally forced to run a deck built around a powerful EX Pokemon. As we have cards like Meowscarada, which I'm personally super excited for, that I'm going to dive into, but I'm going to take it one card at a time and I'm going to go in order. So without further ado, let's just jump into it. I know I have this ad here below, like right here. Like, I know that's annoying. I don't even know what the hell this is, but I don't use ad block. I never really have. I'm a YouTuber. I don't think, you know, it's like a moral thing. For me, it's just, I just don't like being a hypocrite. I make a living off of ads on websites, you know, uploading YouTube videos. So I just don't run ad block. You know, it's just a personal decision, and hopefully you guys don't mind because I do know it is annoying to see these things like pop up in below. But, you know, we're going to be zooming in on cards specifically a lot and stuff and discussing them. So, yeah, hopefully that doesn't distract you too much. Like I said, this link will be in the description down below. Let's jump right into it because we got a lot to talk about, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, we have a total of 7 new grass-type cards. And first, we got the Beedrill EX Evolution line. Weedle has 50 HP. And the multiple attack that is essentially the same, or the multiply. I think with coughing it's actually called divide. I'm not sure, but it's essentially the same attack. As you go for the multiply attack, you will not be dealing damage. Instead, you will be putting a random Weedle from your deck onto your bench. This is the same as the second version of coughing. The reason why the second version of coughing hasn't really seen much play up until now, I expected more out of it initially. There's several reasons, right? Like, first of all, the second version of coughing, unlike the first one, you know, first of all, does not deal damage, but most importantly, has a retreat cost of 2. Coughing having a retreat cost of 1 is a big deal, and that is something that Weedle doesn't have to worry about. And another thing is that because Arceus was released, the drop in play rate for Wheezing was very real. And that is because status effects are not as efficient as they used to be. At least, you know, where every deck is running Arceus, it seems, you don't really benefit much from running decks that poison, burn, sleep, paralyze English Pokemon, because there's the main Pokemon of the meta is immune to these effects. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because I do think coughing now is a lot better. The second version of coughing is a lot better than people give it credit for. And that is because of the release of Pokemon Communication. With Pokemon Communication, you can avoid the downside of this attack, which is often you're going to be drawing into the second copy of the Pokemon. But if you run a Pokemon Communication in the deck, you can use Pokemon Communication, return that second copy of Weedle to the deck, and then end the turn with a multiply attack, bringing it onto the board. So I think this Weedle being a thing will make Pokemon Communication even more of a staple for Weedle Beedrill decks, because you are not only going to be enhancing, you know, the odds of completing all pieces for the Stage 2 Evolution line, but you're also going to be making this Weedle more consistent at thinning your deck. Deck thinning is very good in Pokemon Pocket. In Pokemon Pocket, the vast majority of games, you draw at the very least 80% of your deck in a match. And therefore, thinning, in a lot of games you draw the entire deck, but thinning is important because it allows you to draw more consistently into what you need, right? Because you're thinning the deck, and it's always been like a good thing in card games in general, but in Pokemon Pocket, it's even more powerful because of the low density of decks to begin with. So this multiply ability will allow you to get that second Weedle out of the deck and thus enhance your chances of drawing into Kakuna and Beedrill. And also, like I said, functions really well with Pokemon communication as well to correct those bad situations in which you find both at the very beginning. Very good effect. Just because of that, it's just a very, very good attack to have for your first stage, especially because the downside of Weedle not being able to attack is not really a thing 50% of the time. Because 50% of the time, I mean, it's not exactly 50% of the time because you're not always going to be drawing into the Kakuna within the first 2 turns of your match. But if you go first with Weedle, you're not going to be able to multiply if you find the Kakuna early because you're just going to evolve into Kakuna as fast as you can. But if you're going second, that's where this multiply attack really comes into play. And I really like it. I think it definitely is a great basic to have for a stage 2 evolution line, and it does pay a bit of a price, you know, with that 50 HP, which is shared by the other version of Weedle as well. And while you will be lacking or missing out on that 20 damage when going second, I do think it's very, very valuable to be able to thin your deck and get those Weedle, especially because you're not just thinning your deck, you're finding the basic Pokemon of a stage 2 evolution line, which is going to enhance your chances of not only completing the first Beedrill, but also potentially finishing up the second as well. And 2 Beedrill EXs completed in a match, that is only going to lead to good things. So very good stuff here. As then we got Kakuna, which rises the HP up to 80 and has the String Shot attack. This is a iconic attack from the very first Pokemon games, which is kind of useless in the actual Pokemon games, but it's pretty damn good here, as String Shot will make it so that you flip a coin, and if it's heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. Paralysis is essentially the same effect as sleep, except for the fact that paralysis will wear at the end of the turn, while sleep can keep on going afterwards. But the key thing is it's better than stuff like Confusion, for example, because unlike confused Pokemon, paralyzed Pokemon, like Pokemon that are asleep, will not be able to be retreated. So your opponent is stuck with whatever is there. So this is a very solid stage 1 to lead on to Beedrill with. Like, this is really, really good, especially because context really matters. And as you evolve to Kakuna and you potentially paralyze the Pokemon, you're dealing 20 damage, which is honestly really... Dealing 20 damage and 50% of the time paralyzing something, that's like, for just 1 energy, is pretty wild. Like, this stage 1 is actually super, super good, in my opinion. And phenomenal to, I mean, it completely replaces the other Kakuna in any sort of Beedrill deck, whether you're playing regular Beedrill or Beedrill EX. I think Beedrill decks can definitely afford to run 1 copy of the regular Beedrill. So you run 2 copies of the EX and you run 1 copy of Beedrill with maybe 1 or maybe even 2. I mean, definitely 1, but maybe even 2 Pokemon communication so that you can synergize well with the Weedle and also resort to the regular Beedrill, because the difference between regular Beedrill and this Beedrill EX is that regular Beedrill, while, you know, definitely a lot less resilient, is able to attack for 1 energy and deal 70 damage. Regular Beedrill is actually really good. It's just that it's a stage 2 evolution, and it's hard to pair it with something else that doesn't require multiple pieces to form within grass and is able to deal a lot of damage, right? You can think about stuff like Celebi, but there's just better combinations for that. But now being able to run both Beedrill and regular Beedrill, like EX and regular, is a very big deal. And I really, really like this Weedle and Kakuna into Beedrill. Like, Beedrill EX already felt very impressive, but with these new 2 versions of the prior evolutions, it's looking amazing, honestly. Crushing Spear will discard a random energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. Another reason why you want to run potentially 2 Pokemon communication in this deck is because you want to be able to evolve Beedrill as fast, as quickly as possible. Because the earlier you're able to enable the Crushing Spear, the more likely you'll be able to lock out your opponent's lead out of building up energy and therefore enabling its strongest attack. There's a certain point that once your opponent is able to enable their high-end attack, even if you take away the energy, they just can place that same energy and enable it again next turn. So you have this time limit, right, for this effect to actually be absolutely devastating. You know, it goes from being devastating and potentially game-winning to just being a bit of a nuisance, preventing your opponent from building up something in the back. You know, it's a big, big difference. So you want to have Beedrill come in as quickly as possible. And thus, double Pokemon communication and the basic Weedle really, really plays into this. So I really like the design of this. Beedrill is surprisingly bulky. Like, I've never heard of a Beedrill like being bulky in any Pokemon game ever. But I guess there's always a first. And Pokemon Pocket is that, man. 170 HP is an amazing HP stat to hit. That allows you to survive Mewtwo's Side Drive. It allows you to survive easily Arceus maxed out Ultimate Force, even with a potential red boost in this case, and all sorts of high-end attacks. Like, there's very few things. Not even a Blastoise maxed out Hydro Bazooka will knock you out. That's how good 170 HP is in this game. So I expect big things out of Beedrill. Beedrill may be one of the very first cards that I build a deck around because I'm really excited. I love the underdogs. Like Beedrill and Butterfree, these early stage Viridian Forest bug types have never gotten any proper respect. And maybe now people will finally accept them as real Pokemon. So I also really like Beedrill. I thought Mega Beedrill was one of the coolest Mega Evolution designs. So I'm excited to see Beedrill EX, and I expect big things from this. Like very, very, very exciting stuff. I think Grass is overall a big winner from this expansion. Because not only do we have Beedrill, but we're going to talk about Masquerade in a bit. Before, we're going to talk about Pinsir for 2 seconds, because we've already talked about this in the reaction trailer. But basically, it's a better version of the other Pinsir. Still not very good. I don't think it's going to be very playable because it's still very energy hungry. It could potentially go into dual energy decks. But aside from that, I'm going to drink a little bit of water if you don't mind. My throat is a little bit dry. I don't see much out of this, honestly. It's a basic. It has a better attack than regular Pinsir. But that's pretty much it. There's just not much to say about this. Not particularly exciting. Not necessarily unplayable, but not meta-defining by any means. Now we're going to move on to the second Stage 2 evolution line from Grass. I am familiar with this one because even though I haven't played Sun and Moon nor Scarlet Violet, I think it's the name, I have played Pokemon Showdown. Okay, give me a moment. Stay hydrated, kids. So, I have played Pokemon Showdown, and Meowscarada is actually a relatively relevant Pokemon within the OU meta. That's why I do know of other Pokemon like the Steel type with the hammer that I forgot her name, Takaton or some shit like that. And also, I am very familiar with Gold Dingo, I think is his name, because that is also a very relevant Pokemon in the OU Showdown meta. So having that said, I know what Meowscarada is. I have a friend who loves cat Pokemon as well. And, it's a pretty cool evolution line, and it has a sick, full art that we're going to go over after. As we saw in the trailer, Sprigatito has the Cry for Help ability, which is essentially very similar to Weedle's attack, but instead it's putting the Pokemon in your hand. It's kind of the same. The difference being that with Weedle, because you're sending Weedle to the board at the end of the turn, you will theoretically be able to evolve that Weedle in the bench into Kakuna next turn immediately. That won't be the case with Sprigatito. And Sprigatito is also not as precise, obviously. That's a more obvious comparison, that you're getting a random grass type Pokemon. You're not just getting another Sprigatito. So you have to actually work with what you get in that point, but can also help you find specific pieces easier. So it's just a different approach at it, but it also has ultimately the same function, which is to thin your deck out of the Pokemon so you can find your Stage 2 pieces. I love these kind of attacks onto the basic version of the deck because it really gives you a solid option for when you're going second. Because going second can actually, with a Stage 2 evolution, you can have a bit of a slower time building up your Pokemon, and you make up for that with, deck thinning, which is really nice. Floragato is a 90 HP, 2 energy / attacker. Pretty underwhelming, really. Not much more to say about it. 90 HP is not bad, not terrible. It's basically another version of Weeping Bell. It's the first thing that comes to mind, even though Weeping Bell has a higher retreat cost. But then we go into Meowscarada, and this Pokemon, this is one of the... I'm going to go... While I talk about this one, I'm going to go because this art is just absolutely incredible. I'm in love. So I'm gonna talk about it with this on the screen because it's just way too good. I don't need Adobe Acrobat Pro. Just get out of here. Okay, let's just leave that like that. So Meowscarada has 140 HP and a 2 energy Fighting Claws attack that deals 60 damage initially. But then if your opponent's active Pokemon is an EX Pokemon, this attack deals 70 more damage. Ladies and gentlemen, this Pokemon deals 130 damage for 2 energy towards EX Pokemon. This is the kind of card design that is going to be amazing for Pokemon Pocket because it's really going to diversify decks. With the combination of this and stuff like Red, we have, we already had Tauros in the past, but this is a faster, even though it's a stage 2 evolution, it's just a much more energy efficient and easier to pivot as well. It's a very, very nice tool for non-EX decks to be able to compete seriously with EX builds. And I am super excited for Meowscarada. 130 damage to an EX Pokemon allows you to one-shot the likes of Celebi, Mew, and with a red boost, you can one-shot the likes of Palkia and Dialga. And of course, the likes of Arceus as well. Not factoring in a giant cape, of course. But this is super good because if you're not hitting something that's an EX Pokemon, you're still dealing 60 damage for 2 energy, which is really solid. I mean, it's not amazing. It's actually pretty mid, but it's not useless. And if it's a non-EX Pokemon, odds are you're going to be able to 2-hit KO it with this kind of attack anyways. So I love the design. The bulk is really nice, 140 HP. It's a stage 2. Like, there are better examples, but not by much. And all in all, Meowscarada is a very, very exciting card for me. And one of the winners of this set for sure. As then we have the new Charizard EX. We talked about this in my reaction video. I kind of since it was a reaction, it was like my absolute first impression. I did not interpret the card correctly. Basically, Charizard it doesn't really need any energy onto it until it goes to the front line. You go to the front line, you place an energy, you stoke, and then next turn, by placing the second energy alongside the 3 that's been generated, you'll be able to fire off a Steam Artillery. So basically, Charizard EX is meant to be a Pokemon that's going to be taking a hit first and then attacking nonstop. So it's going to pair well with cards that allow you to heal it and increase its longevity, essentially, like make it more resilient. That is how this Charizard is going to function, which makes it very different from the other version of Charizard that we have that just pretty much automatically goes with Moltres every single time. And I like a different approach at Charizard. And one of the big things to talk about here, I'm not hyper impressed with the Charmeleon. There's not much difference between this one and the other one, but the Charmander is a big upgrade. Combustion, in my opinion, is significantly better to Ember because the Charmander that we have now, if you place an energy onto it and attack with Ember, 99% of the time you're going to regret doing that. It's just not a good idea because you're behind 1 energy. And whenever I faced a Charizard deck with Moltres and they do that to me, it's the indication of a bit of a newer player because that's just not the way to go with pretty much ever. Unless you're able to get a key kill on a Pokemon there. Maybe you can justify the tempo loss with that. But this one deals 10 less damage, but you don't burn your energy. So massive, massive upgrade for Charmander. Pretty cute art as well. And we'll see if we get a cool, because it is sad to let go of the other Charmander because the art is absolutely beautiful. The full art one, I mean. So you got to take that in mind. As then we got a new Magmar. This new Magmar has 70 HP and deals 20 damage with Flare. This is really exciting because this is actually going to, first of all, it's going to enhance the good old Blaine aggro deck because the other Magmar is just not good in it. But with this one, Blaine can allow Magmar to deal 50 damage. So if you compare it to Skarmory, Skarmory combines with a tool. Now, placing a tool to Skarmory is generally better than just wasting a supporter card, but it still allows you to have a Pokemon that requires no extra pieces and deals 50 damage alongside Blaine. So it's a perfect addition to the old school Blaine deck. But it's also, potentially more than that, as we got Magmortar, a new version of Magmortar that I personally like a lot more than the other one. We have a different version of Magmar that has the Stoke attack that allows you to ramp fire energy onto it. And the key thing about this Magmortar is that it's faster, right? You're dealing 30 less damage, but you have the Smoke Bomb ability, which is the same as the second version of Weezing, which says that if your opponent's next turn, if the defending Pokemon, so the Pokemon that got hit with this, tries to attack, there's a 50% chance that attack will not go through. So I actually like the idea of combining this Magmortar with the Stoke Magmar. Because if you're going second, you put an energy onto it, you Stoke, and you ramp. And then on the next turn, you bring in Magmortar and you start smoke bombing. And you have a 120 HP Pokemon that is going to be applying a lot of pressure, will easily 2-hit KO Dialga because you're hitting it super effectively, and will... Like, the funny thing is, if Dialga's Metallic Turbo attack doesn't happen, they also don't get to ramp. So, this card could be legitimately, I don't know how to say, it's hard to say underrated because people haven't even gotten the chance to play it. But I think people don't, a lot of players probably don't realize how good of a counter this could be to Dialga Arceus as a deck. Like, this random Magmortar. And I definitely am excited to experiment with it in that regard, as I do consider it an upgrade. The art, I don't think it's an upgrade, really. I did like the other Magmortar art, but everything else about it is quite exciting, and it gives you more layers to building decks with fire types, which is always something that I'm grateful for, because fire types just always barely get any cards, man. Like, one day, fire types will be able to match water types. Again, I feel like at this point, the water card pool is literally double the size of fire. And you got to think Gen 4 for that, I guess. As then we have Paldean Tauros. I know nothing about this guy. This is one of the games that I did not play, so I'm not gonna act like I know who he is, but seems pretty interesting. 110 HP and a Blaze Tackle that deals 80 damage for 3 energy, and this Pokemon also deals 10 damage to itself. Yeah, I don't think this is very good, honestly. I just think this is on the low end of the spectrum here, honestly. Let's just move on. As now we got to talk about water. We got a new Tentacruel, ladies and gentlemen. And it may seem like a pure vanilla version of one, but what is relevant is that this Tentacruel has 100 HP. A lot of times when we get these stage 1 evolutions that deal 40 damage, they tend to have like 90 HP. There are exceptions to this, obviously, like there's Marowak for fighting, and then there's Clefable for psychic that do reach 100. But regular Starmie, for example, has 90 HP and a free retreat cost. I don't really know what more. There's not much more to say though, because this Tentacool is just worse. Like, it has 10 more HP, but is only dealing 10 damage. That's a big deal. And I still think, like, if you're actually incorporating Tentacool into your deck, you're just going with the other Tentacruel anyways, because Tentacruel is actually a really solid Pokemon. It just, like, in a vacuum, it's good, but there's just so much good stuff in water that there's generally, like, better options to go for, unfortunately. The other Tentacruel also has more bulk. Having 110 HP is very relevant, which is something this Tentacruel lacks. And there's not really much more to say about it. I think this will be an option for, like, budget decks, but it's not really going to go beyond that. Floatzel is kind of more compelling, though, as Floatzel is like a 1 energy version that, does not have a free retreat cost, of course, of Lumineon. As we can deal... Lumineon is limited to the bench, though. Floatzel can deal 30 damage to anything, right? Floatzel could see play in some decks. The damage output is a little bit low, I'm not going to lie, but it's still... Like, just compare Floatzel to Tentacruel, right? It's 10 less HP, and it deals 10 less damage. But having the ability to target the bench is pretty massive. But if you think about it, Hitmonlee does the same without having to find 2 pieces to complete him and not being able to attack to the front line, right? So I also kind of think that Floatzel will kind of just fall into a category similar to that of Tentacruel. Like, it will be technically playable, but you'll generally have better options. From a competitive standpoint, especially now that Ranked is coming, I don't think Floatzel will unfortunately be as relevant in that sense. But it will be playable, and I will be trying it out. Now, the next one is really exciting, though. We talked about Wiglet into Wugtrio. I did already dive into it with the, with my reaction to the trailer, but we're going to go over it again because this is one of the most exciting new EX additions. I'm still coming to terms with the visual impact this card has over me. I just feel like, like I've said before, I just think that this is essentially proof that sometimes nature gets a little bit too wacky. Some certain genetic mutations happen and they should not have happened. I feel sorry for this Wugtrio because it just looks really, really, really weird. But, moving beyond that, we have to look at the value in the inside, right? Though I don't want to look at this thing's insides to be precise, but its personality is essentially what we're going to focus on here. And what a personality it has, ladies and gentlemen. The pop out throughout, that's interesting attack name, is essentially a faster version of Dragonite's Draco Meteor attack. It's going to be triggering 3 times. Dragonite triggers 4 times. That's a big difference between the two, but I think Wugtrio is a massive improvement. Even though it's an EX Pokemon, the fact that it is able to pop off 1 turn before is a massive deal. The fact that it only requires 1 specific source of energy is an even more massive deal. The fact that it has a bigger retreat cost is also a really big deal. And the fact that it's a stage 1 evolution is a big deal. A lot of big deals with this guy. You know, once you move beyond the hideous nature of its physicality, it's very, very exciting. This card is super, super, super exciting. I cannot wait for people to play Misty on this. You don't need to play this with Misty. Like, you really don't. Like, because it's not a basic Pokemon, so you still need to find the stage 1 evolution. I think you're just better off building a more consistent version of the deck. Like, I've been liking to build a lot of... I've really been, you know, you'll see by tomorrow's video, like, even with Blastoise EX, like, I am moving beyond Misty. Do I play Misty as a 1-of in that deck? I don't even remember, to be honest. But all in all, you know, people always say, oh, Water type Misty, and I don't really think that's the case with this guy. One of the most exciting cards from the expansion. I really like the Draco Meteor attack. It's one of my favorite attacks in Pokemon Pocket from Dragonite, and the fact that we have a more consistent, faster version of it, what is not to like? Like, yeah, you're getting 1 proc less, but oh my god, this card is going to be so fun to play. I was going to say it's not even funny, but it kind of is, because just look at it. Then we got Dondanzo and Tatsugiri. So we finally know who Dondanzo is. Tatsugiri we did see in the trailer with the retreat directive ability, allows you to retreat your Dondanzo for free. So essentially reminding you of Heatran with Arceus. But unlike Heatran and Arceus, this is a combination that features 2 non-EX Pokemon instead. And Dondanzo is basically Articuno at home. It's not an EX Pokemon, and has an Ocean Cyclone that is fundamentally identical. I don't know why I said fundamentally there. It was just kind of, I mean, because it's not identical exactly, because it requires 4 energy, but it's the same as Articuno EX's Blizzard. And it's going to be dealing 80 damage and 10 damage to all the opponent's bench Pokemon. It's going to take you longer to build this guy up, but you can potentially also use Dondanzo as a bit of a wall early on in the match, and then pivot with it without having to invest any energy onto it. And that is very relevant, ladies and gentlemen. 120 HP for a basic is super impressive. You know, for context, Pokemon like Snorlax are considered tremendously bulky for a basic, and they have 140. 120 is really nice, and having the ability to pivot with it for free is really, really nice as well. And also being able to dump energy onto it and make use of it in the later portion of the game is also very relevant. You could potentially even go dual energy with this, though I would personally not recommend it. As you know, a lot of these cards that are like, their attacks are somewhat balanced by the fact that you can run multiple sources of energy. Because of how dual energy decks work in Pokemon Pocket in general, this is generally not that big of an upside as it would be in potentially the trading card game itself. But all in all, Dondanzo Tatsugiri seems relatively interesting. I don't think it'll be meta-defining by any means, but I do think there will be some really fun builds that you can make with this, and I will be diving into that. Get it? That diving? Because I'm getting old. As we're gonna move on to Electric, the new Pikachu. We already talked about this. You guys saw that I uploaded a Pikachu video yesterday, and that same Dawn approach with Magneton can work with this Pikachu potentially even better, as you're able to transfer energy onto this with Dawn and fire off a massive Thunderbolt that will allow you to one-shot the vast majority of Pokemon in the game. With a red boost, 170. Very, very few things survive that hit. Very little. So that is, I like this Pikachu a lot because the Pikachu EX that we have now is more focused on being enabled as quickly as possible. This Pikachu is more of an end game finisher, right? You can't really resort to its downright ridiculous power from the get-go because you're going to run out of tempo. Your opponent is going to be able to catch up and blow you back. But if you preserve this for the final blow, then you're good to go. Like, it's just so easy to pick off, like, so many things with this kind of attack. And it reminds me of Raichu, right? With the 140 Thunderbolt attack that works with Lieutenant Surge. But the difference being With Pikachu EX, you don't need to combine it with any other piece. And that is such a big deal. At this point, we know basic Pokemon, good in Pokemon Pocket because they're just a lot more consistent. And having a high-end finisher that doesn't require the pieces allows this to be mixed in more. It just enhances the deck building options, basically, because it takes up less space in the deck. And it also just, yeah, that's basically it. And it functions more consistently. So you can run this with like stage 2 evolutions and have this as a finisher. You know, Magneton, Magnezone is a clear combination, but there could potentially be a lot more to do with it, and it's exciting in that sense. I don't know what Voltorb and Electrode are supposed to be doing here. Like, the other versions of Voltorb are better. Like, this one is more resilient, I guess, but that's pretty much it. This Electrode is absolute garbage. Like, this is one of the worst cards in the expansion, easily. Like, yeah, you get 10 more HP, but you're dealing 50 damage, and half of the time you're dealing 80 damage with this, and you don't even get the free retreat cost. The other Electrode even, like, fell off. This thing is not even gonna, like, go to the surface. Just gonna drown. Just irrelevance from the very beginning. Dead on arrival. These cards, not worth talking about, really. I have talked about Pachirisu. I think this card will definitely be meta-defining. One of the strongest cards in the set, in my opinion, with the Plasma attack, allowing you to ramp energy. It's essentially Electric's version of Manaphy. Instead of spreading out into 2 bodies, it's dealing a little bit of damage, and it has 20 more HP. HP is even more relevant when you're trying to ramp with a Pokemon, because a lot of times the problem with Manaphy is that she dies really quickly. But Pachirisu is going to be tough to take down quickly. Like, I can't think of a single, like, only an Executor EX going first can potentially one-shot it. And if you put a cape on it, not even that can happen. So, big deal. Like, this is an incredible card that's going to enhance Electric-type decks significantly. Do not sleep on him. Pachirisu is going to be absolutely legit. And then we got a stage 2 evolution here with Pawmi, Pawmo, and Pawmot. I don't know. I have no idea who these are. They look like, it's like the same Pokemon though. Like, isn't it like, it's just like slightly bigger. It's literally just like slightly bigger. I am not impressed by this like stage. Like, I don't know, maybe it's the art specifically, but it just looks like the thing is growing, but that's it. Like, this is not an evolution. This is actual real biology. What's real biology doing in Pokemon? This is stupid. But yeah, it's, you know, it's interesting because Pawmot, as a stage 2 evolution, has 140 HP, which again is pretty solid. It reminds me a lot of Poliwrath. The big difference is Pawmot, unlike Poliwrath, can attack for just 2 energy. And that already makes it a lot better. The problem this Pokemon has is the same one that Poliwrath has, really. And, you know, once Druddigon was released, it really exacerbated that. Druddigon showed us how strong, essentially, counterattack, fight back, or whatever. I think it's counterattack, too, for Poliwrath, actually, and Rough Skin from Druddigon are all fundamentally the same ability. You know, when they get damaged by an attack from an opponent's Pokemon, you do 20 damage to it back, if they are in the active slot, of course. So the issue with Pawmot is the same one Poliwrath faces and the one that Druddigon avoids. Druddigon is applying this effect from the very beginning because it's a basic Pokemon. This comes into play once you complete a stage 2 evolution. This means that this evolution, this counterattack value is going to be happening way less, because by the moment in which this comes down and is on the board and the counterattack is going to be triggering, your opponent has already enabled high-end attackers that are going to be able to, at the very least, 2-hit KO it. So you're going to be netting a lot less value out of the counterattack. It is going to be more viable than Poliwrath, who has like 0 viability, because it's able to attack for 2 energy, which makes it considerably faster and reliable. But all in all, Pawmot is quite underwhelming because, I mean, it's almost like 90 damage, you know, but they have to attack you back. Like, don't get me wrong, this is playable. It's definitely playable. But there's no way this thing becomes like metagame, like super relevant, really, because it's hindered by that, by an ability that wants to, you know, the earlier it's implemented, the better. And when it's put on a stage 2 evolution, it's just the value just does not, it just does not lead to that, unfortunately. You need this on a Pokemon like Druddigon that you can lead off with, and your opponent is like, oh, I don't want to touch this thing. Massive difference between Polyrath Palmat and Drotagon. So yeah, very unimpressed by this one. Definitely the winner of this batch. Electric is pretty weak for the most part, except for Pachirisu and Pikachu. Pachirisu and Pikachu are the two relevant cards. Everything else is kind of like filler here. When it comes to water, it's kind of similar, you know, like Wuk Trio is extremely exciting. Dandazo and Tatsugiri is promising. These are also just kind of filler. You know, with fire, we got the new Charizard, which we can play into. I think Magmortar is pretty promising, but again, very few cards for fire as usual. So far, grass types are by far like the best here so far. Let's see if that continues as we go into 35 minutes already. I mean, we're reviewing all these cards, so you know it's gonna be one of those videos. I don't think I'm rambling too much for each card, so hopefully it's not the case. We got a new Alakazam, ladies and gentlemen. A new Abra, a new Kadabra! Finally, a playable Kadabra! Like, this is not only exciting for the new Alakazam, but also for the old Alakazam as well. We no longer have to play... It's the same attack too, like Psy Shot, but it's dealing like 60 for 3 energy? And it has the same stats and retreat cost? Like, what the... like. The other Kadabra is dead, and honestly, good riddance. Because, God, that was like the most annoying aspect of playing Alakazam decks, is how useless Kadabra is. But this Kadabra is not useless at all. It actually makes it so that you're not in a bad spot if you lead off with Abra going first. You find Kadabra, you can start attacking for 30 damage as you evolve on turn 2. So... I like it. It's definitely good. But let's talk about the Alakazam, though. The Alakazam has the Psychic Suppression attack. Same stat line when it comes to HP. Actually, a cheaper retreat cost than the Alakazam that we have now. And, low end of the spectrum for like a staged evolution regarding the HP. Definitely gets... It falls into line. Like, it gets one-shotted by a maxed out Ultimate Force from Arceus, which is really relevant. You know, but Alakazam has always been known... more as an offensive threat and a very frail, like he's always been known as a glass cannon sort of Pokemon. So they kept that theme here. Psychic Suppression deals 80 damage. The attack also deals 20 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon that have an energy attached onto them. So like Articuno's Blizzard on steroids, really, because you're being able to fire this attack off for 2 energy, but unless they're placing energy into a Pokemon on the back, this bench effect is going to be ignored. So that kind of like balances it out. But make no mistake, this is a really interesting... I like this a lot, honestly. I think this is a much better version of Florges. Florges has the healing effect, right? But Alakazam's Psychic Suppression is more offensive, and I think it's more fitting for that role. And I actually really like it. Maybe there is a world as well in which you play both Alakazams. You play one copy of each. You run Pokemon Communication, and you find the one that you need. So I think that'll be my first approach at deck building. Not overcommitting to one of them specifically. Having the one Alakazam with this one to suppress the opponent, apply pressure, and deal damage to the back, and enable them for Cyrus. And then have the other Alakazam as a heavy hitter / finisher. Alakazam stonks have overall gone up. There are more options now, and all in all, I think this is a pretty solid evolution line, with Kadabra being a big win as well, because it's just such an upgrade from the other one. It's crazy. The new Mime is able to juggle, flip 4 coins for 2 energy, and can deal up to 80 damage. But most of the time, it's going to be dealing 40. Man, that's an IDHP stat for like a basic. That's pretty decent, but yeah. Mr. Mime is just... I mean, it's Mr. Mime. What can you expect? He tries. Okay, he definitely tries. But he's going to try harder. But, he tries. Drifloon and Driplim now are 60, vanilla versions as well. Not much more to say about them. I mean, these versions are actually weak to darkness, unlike the other ones, which are weak to electric. So that is an important thing to note. Drifloon is a psychic version of regular Starmie. Regular Starmie doesn't see much play. This Drifloon also won. It's a little bit too vanilla in that sense, unfortunately. It doesn't really have many more perks than that. Like, I still think I would rather play Clefable, really, because at least Clefable has a weakness to Steel, but Clefable hasn't seen much play in Psychic either, so pretty irrelevant, to be honest. Giratina, we've talked about this. Giratina is going to be a very, very meta-defining card. Definitely up there. Very unique ability that allows you to ram from the very beginning of your turn. Like, even if you're going first, you can start ramping onto this. But it's important to note sequencing will matter. I think a lot of people are going to mess up with this card, which is going to be really funny. There's going to be a lot of people that are just going to be clicking on this ability at the beginning and they're just ending their turn. It doesn't make... Am I a bad person for saying that I'm excited for that? Like, it's going to be a good time. I mean, not for them, but, you know, I don't know. I think it'll be funny. It's going to happen. Believe me, it's going to happen a lot. But you got to factor that in. Like, you know, as soon as you trigger this, the turn ends. And I like that design approach. Like, that adds more. You need to think more when you pilot this. And it's going to be interesting, you know, because this is going to build up energy onto itself, could potentially function with Dawn as well. I think the biggest aspect of Giratina is the synergy with Dawn, because you can trigger the but the thing is, okay, the synergy with Dawn, but you got to keep in mind that if you, because this seems kind of busted with Dawn because you're able to essentially ramp into Psychic, but it's balanced by the fact that the turn is ending. So if you want to set up a Dawn with Giratina, you won't be able to attack that same turn. So keep that in mind. But if you go first, you have a 2 energy attacker in the front, and you put Giratina on the bench. You go for the ability that turn after you've played all your Professor's Research and Pokeballs and whatever, and placed all your Pokemon. You go for the Broken Space Bellow, or Broken Space Below, English. The next turn, you can actually ramp and get a 2 energy attack going while going first on your second turn, which is, if yesterday's video showcased that's very, very powerful. It's a very strong thing to do. So I'm going to have to brainstorm a little bit as to what I'm going to be combining this with. But the deck building possibilities with Giratina are very, very exciting. And it's definitely overall, all in all, one of the most exciting cards within the expansion. And definitely the highlight of the Psychic crew. Even though we got Gimmighoul, this is relevant for the, I was going to call him Duolingo. Duolingo. Goldingo. This evolves into Goldingo. It has the Chest Outflage attack, which is essentially the same as Sphinx attack, which, you know, you flip a coin and you can potentially prevent all damage and effects done to this Pokemon if you flip heads, which enhances your chances of, you know, and allows you, even though it's a Psychic type, its attack goes for, you know, this can go into any deck, but obviously it's going to go into a Steel type deck because that's where you want to be playing this, because it evolves into #Duolingo, which we'll talk about in a bit. As then we got the fighting types. We have a new Machamp evolution line, ladies and gentlemen. We have the Machop with the low kick. It has 10 less HP, but a retreat cost of 1. That's very relevant. Is it worth? Because in the Machamp deck that I run 2 Leaves anyways, so I still think I would be playing the other Machop, but it's definitely an interesting thing to consider. Pommel is a 2 energy attack from Machoke that deals 30 damage, and 50% of the time it will deal 60 damage. Is this really better than just having a guaranteed 50 from Machoke every single time? I honestly don't think so. I think you still play... I think Machop and Machoke, like the old versions, are still better, though Machop depends on the context of your deck, right? But the Machamp is definitely quite compelling. It's similar to the Electivire in design. Has 150 HP, which is really solid for a stage 2. If this Pokemon has at least 2 extra fighting energy attached, this attack deals 50 more damage. So technically, this Pokemon has a 2 energy 70 damage attack and a 4 energy 120 attack. The big thing is that, for example, Mew cannot copy the high-end version of that attack. That's, as of now, the only relevant comparison, really. The difference between Machamp and the likes of Electivire is Electric has access to Ramp. Machamp doesn't. Fighting types do not have access to Ramp. So I think this card is going to be very underwhelming, unfortunately. I'm a big Machad fan, because he is a Mega Chad, but unfortunately I just don't really see it here. I just still would rather be playing Machamp EX. And even with Beedrill, I can see myself using regular Beedrill as a one-off in that deck. I don't see myself using this as a one-off in the Machamp EX deck, to be completely honest with you. So I unfortunately think this is a little bit filler. I just don't really see the impact this evolution line is going to have. It's just not quite doing anything special. And it does have the perk of not having Machamp's 3 retreat cost from the EX version, but that's pretty much it, really. Not crazy about this Machamp design. Maybe it turns out to be a little bit better than I thought, but I'm not really having high hopes for it. We have a new Hitmonlee that actually kicks the front. Like, this guy can close combat as well. Who would have thought? I still like the other Hitmonlee better. I think the other Hitmonlee serves a very niche purpose, a very relevant purpose, and despite all these expansions, is still very, very relevant and very unique in what it does within the fighting typing and within the card pool as a whole. So not much more to say about that. The new Hitmonchan is kind of interesting because it gives you a 90 damage, 3 energy attack on a basic. That's actually, that's interesting because if you design a deck with a bunch of like fast attackers, you could justify like a Hitmonchan in there to essentially sink energy onto. Maybe like Lucario builds that can run one Hitmonchan of this nature and have a high-end attacker without having to, and having like a bunch of other fast ones. But at most, it'll be a one-off in those kind of decks, and I don't even know if it'll even make the cut in that regard. 20-card decks. Cards have to be really good to be able to like replace other ones, and that's important to know. The new Riolu, I prefer the other one. This one has a punch attack that, is double the damage, but it requires 2 energy. The vast majority of the time. I mean, it does have 10 more HP, which, is because this is a much worse attack. Ultimately, I still think the other Riolu is better. And like we said, Lucario EX is also extremely exciting. Most of the powerful cards here, there's a pattern, right? Like the EX Pokemon are the most meta-defining, but we're also getting a lot of tools to combat them. And that's what I really like about this set. Like the fact that, we're getting really strong EX Pokemon, but people are going to really gravitate towards them, and they're not going to run Meowscarada and wipe them all out, and it's going to be glorious. But this Aura Sphere attack is really, really interesting. I like it a lot. I explained it in the reaction video to the trailer. I think it's just really, really powerful, and I love Pokemon that spread out their damage between 2 different targets. And I think the 130 split is really nice. Could potentially combine Lucario X with regular Lucario as well, at least as a one-off, and you have the ability to actually enhance this Aura Sphere to 120 in certain matchups because it's only a stage 1 evolution, and you can deal 120 and deal 30. And if you're able to enable that for 3 energies, that's just straight up broken. So really, really cool stuff. Flamingo, I don't even know why this is a Pokemon. This is literally a Flamingo. Like, this is a bird. This is not a Pokemon. This is a bird. And, it's basically Pinsir 2.0. But, the old Pinsir. Flip 2 coins, detect those 50 damage for each head for 2 energy. Only 80 HP. Awful. Don't play this. Ever. Please. Let's move on to Darkness. Ekans, and Arbok. Don't like them. Don't like this at all. 3 energy, Venomous Fang attack, dealing 7 damage and poisoning the Pokemon. 110 HP, 2 retreat cost. Garbage. I'm sorry to say it. The other Arbok is infinitely better. You have better options to poison with. Like, I don't see why you ever would play this over something like Weezing, personally. And not personally, it's just a fact. Like, this is just not good. But Wooper, Paladin Wooper, with the poison jab, enabling the poisoning into Clodsire. Now that, again, the same pattern. EX Pokemon good, regular Pokemon bad, Pokemon Pocket. We're kind of like following that pattern. It's undeniable. Like, this is a massive upgrade. I cannot wait to experiment with. The first obvious combination that comes to mind is Weezing, and I think it will end up being the best one. You have 2 stage 1 evolutions, and they just work so well together, and they're both really thick. And 160 HP, it's not 170 HP. Like, there are some things that you're vulnerable to, but all in all, it still survives the vast majority of high-end attacks and can really benefit from something like a Cape. And my God, that Vanish Shock attack is just glorious. 2 energy for 120 damage potentially is absurd. Poison is back, and I cannot wait. We got a new version of Spiritomb, which is actually not bad. This one does require Darkness Energy, but it has the Confuse Ray attack, deals 20 damage and confuses. Like, that's very efficient. High HP stat as well. It kind of like falls into, Spiritomb being a solid Pokemon that's not great, but not terrible. Like, a solid, like good. Not amazing, meta-defining, but definitely playable, and a nice different approach at it. And then we have Shroodle into Graphii. The first one is vanilla, 60-20 damage output, and the second one is where things get interesting. Stage 1 evolution with the poison coining ability. Once during your turn, you may flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. This is basically a poison version of Hypno, but it has a retreat cost of 1 very relevant, and playable attack. 2 energy bite. Honestly, like a pretty bad attack. But you want to evolve Graphite in the bench and poison the Pokemon in the front. I still think Wheezing is better because 20 more HP matters a lot, and because Wheezing is able to just has to be in the front line, yes, but you don't have to flip any coins to get that poison going through, and you have the synergy with Koga as well. Graphite just feels like a little bit too vulnerable. Like that 90 HP can be capitalized on rather quickly, and you're also relying on chance to be able to poison stuff. So, but you're able to do so from the bench. The fact that you're able to do so from the bench is quite relevant. Don't get me wrong. Like I will be experimenting with this. I do believe Wheezing will be better, but this has potential. Like Hypno also flips coins, and I still think Hypno has always been a little bit underrated in that regard. But with the poison, it's definitely interesting. It definitely won't be amazing, but it may end up being a little bit better than I expect it to be because of that utility of just always being able to fire off from the bench and not having to resort to combos to retreat and stuff with it, and having a relatively not awful attack, essentially. As then we have Tinkatink, Tinkatuff, and Tinkaton. My wife really likes this Pokemon evolution and was quite disappointed at it being essentially the worst EX of the bunch by like a mile, really. As we have the Corkscrew Punch for 20 in the first one, standard basic 60-20 split. Then with Tinkatuff, we have the Tenacious Hammer, and this is where the coin flips begin. 2 energy, potentially to deal 60 more damage, so a steel version of the new Machoke, essentially, that's more weaker. And then the EX version, which kind of like reminds you of Kingler, really. You deal 80 damage for sure for 3 energy, but then you can also deal 60 damage 50% of the time. Don't get me wrong, this Pokemon is not awful because 170 HP is very relevant. And this is very much like you can definitely win a lot of games with this, and it's scary to play into because if it does flip, like you have this threat that can just kill your Pokemon if it flips heads with very little investment for the amount of damage that it's dealing. But all in all, it's a stage 2 evolution. And I just feel there's better things to do within Steel. And comparing it to all the other EX Pokemon in this set that are just very impressive, though maybe Charizard ends up... There's a world in which the new Charizard ends up being bad. Because maybe you just cannot afford that sort of playstyle of like, I send this, it takes a hit, and then I try to sweep, right? But I do think that it's still going to be... Maybe Tinkaton ends up being better than Charizard. That would be really sad because this Pokemon is not going to cap up really high, but it could happen. But all in all, it is the worst, or at least the second worst EX Pokemon of the bunch, I think. Though I haven't talked about Bibarel, but I do think Bibarel has some potential. I'm just not very impressed with Tinkaton, honestly. Like I don't quite like that coin flip aspect of it. But we'll see. We got Varoom into Reverum. Yeah, this is like so inspiring from a creative standpoint, like these names. You evolve into, you have that 70 HP, 1 energy dealing 10 damage, which is underwhelming. But then you get the payoff of Spinning Drift for 3 energy, dealing 70 damage. Then you flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's next turn. Prevent all damage and effects of attacks done to this Pokemon. So it's like a faster version of, what was your name? The Bastiodon. It's a faster version of Bastiodon. I mean faster because it's a stage 1 evolution version of it. It's just that it's way less resilient with 110 HP, and it's dealing a little bit less damage. But I think all in all, it's a better version of it. Because ultimately, like, the all or nothing effect is quite relevant. I mean, with Bastiodon, you're able to, like, tank a lot of hits. So you kind of, like, force your opponent to be able to hit you twice, and maybe that makes the effect more reliable. This is more RNG heavy. But I do think you can get away with some really stupid stuff with Reverum. So, it'll be fun to mess around with it in that regard. But there's not much more to say about it. It's just a card that's balanced around RNG and can potentially... There could be some games where you just you keep flipping hits, and you just never take any damage. And your opponent uninstalls the game. So, looking forward to that. Goldengo! Hashtag Duolingo. 120 HP, stage 1 evolution from that psychic chest that we saw earlier. 3 energy, scintillating, surfing attack is essentially a steel type version of Celebi, ladies and gentlemen. It's a stage 1 evolution of Celebi that's not an EX version and requires 1 more energy to get going. But you can pair this with Dialga. It also requires specifically steel type energy. So that's why it's kind of weird that it's like that. I don't know why they do this. They put like one steel type energy and then two normal type energy. In what universe are you ever playing this without it being a pure steel type energy deck, right? Like there's literally no reason to play this outside of that. So it just feels like, they just added that like a little bit of like a useless sprinkle. It's like when you take, you have a dish and you just put this stuff that you can't eat. It's a weird analogy, but I think you know where I'm going here. Like it's just so irrelevant. Like this could be 3 steel type energy and it would just literally be the same. Like just don't pay attention to that. Basically, you only need steel type energy with this because for every steel type energy, you get to flip an extra coin. And it's another version of Celebi. With Dialga, this thing could be incredibly annoying. And I'm excited to try it out, but I am not excited to face off against it. It's gonna piss me off sometimes. Not gonna lie, because Celebi is one of the cards that I really, really dislike going against because it's just so unpredictable and sometimes it just downright steals games. This is stage 1 version of that, and it wants to be ramped into with Dialga, but it could definitely be a different alternative use of Dialga. Though I think we're all a little bit tired of Dialga at this point, ever since Arceus was a thing. As Rattata, Raticate. Yeah, they're there. Filler cards. Not much more to say about it. We got a new Jigglypuff with a 20, basically a vanilla. I call this the vanilla basic. 60 HP, 20 damage for 1 energy. I still kind of like the singing one. Honestly, like putting the Pokemon to sleep is very nice. But the Wigglytuff is actually very exciting. It's a stage 1 evolution with 100 HP that you are able to heal 20 damage from your active Pokemon by triggering it. And it's kind of like, it's like a much better version of Butterfree, because Butterfree is a stage 2 evolution. And even though Butterfree heals everything, it's a stage 2 evolution and it requires 3 energy to deal 50 damage, 60 damage. This deals 50. Like this can actually be a somewhat reliable attacker in a pinch. And the fact that it's a normal type means that it can mix into any typing. So I do actually think this card has a lot going on for it. And I'm excited to experiment with it. It's hard to evaluate beyond that because you still need to run a stage 1 evolution line for this sort of effect. And that is a price to pay. But all in all, Wigglytuff is quite interesting in that sense. And I will be messing around with it. Also, like the full art version is really nice. As then we got 2 energy rollout Lickitung and 3 energy rollout Licky Licky. That filler cards, really. Like, not much more to say about them, honestly. Like, maybe Dialga with Licky Licky EX can run 1 Licky Licky because reason, I don't know, man. Like, there's just not much more to say about it. These are just like, we need more cards. We need to print more cards, and they just make this. And that's it. And you'll never see them again. Unless it's your collection. Like, you'll never actually see them in a game, unfortunately. New Bidoof. Don't care. Old Bidoof is based, and now we may have a reason to play it because we got Bibarel EX with the Carefree Press, dealing 100 damage for 4 energy and then healing 30 from it. It's like a normal type version of Venusaur that can be ramped into with Dialga. I think this guy is going to be a lot better than people give it credit for. I don't know what credit they're giving it, to be honest, but I'm excited to mess around with this. Because you can not only run it in that, you can run it with any sort of other deck that ramps, like for example Manaphy, and it's a potential win condition. Like with a giant cape, like this could be a serious. That's what Venusaur does. It deals 100 damage, but Venusaur gets to play with Erica, right? But if you play this with water, you get to play Irida, and not only Irida, we're gonna be talking about the new supporter cards here. Because Bunnyary is more of the same, just like a vanilla incorporation that there's not much more to say about it. Cyclizar is like 80 HP. Could potentially, after the first attack, it technically becomes a better Farfetch, but you are missing out on that 40 damage initially. But it is playable. It's definitely it's interesting. It could be a good addition for like aggro decks, honestly, that want to be a little bit more resilient early. Because Farfetch HP, with the slight power creep the game has been going under with the new expansions, has kind of fallen down a little bit. So maybe Cyclizar comes in and replaces it. There's a legitimate argument for it. It's a bit of a slow startup, but once it gets going, the problem is you can't send it in the late game and deal 40 damage immediately, and that's a pretty big deal. I still think ultimately Farfetch will be better actually because of that. But it's nice to have that different option, I guess. As now we have the 4 trainer cards. We talked about the Iono. I stand by what I said with the Iono. Iono is actually going to be a lot better than some people may think it'll be. just because it allows you to mulligan your hand. There will be some decks that really want to find specific pieces. Even like looking back into something like Weedle, for example, it's not just Pokemon Communication. You can also just go for Iono and then shuffle your hand again. Pray that you don't draw into Weedle and get it out of your deck. Stuff like that. You know, allow you to fix bricks. Essentially, you are paying a price for it. But very specific, like combo heavy decks that want to have specific cards together can run Iono unironically, and it's an exciting addition to the game from a deck building perspective. We have Pokemon Center Lady. This is a card that really surprised me because we are getting a universal healing effect. We have Erica healing for 50. We got Irida healing everything for 40 that has water energy attached. Now we have the Pokemon Center Lady, which appropriately does not discriminate. She does not care what color your energy is. She will heal anything regardless for 30. 10 more than Potion, and will allow the Pokemon to recover from special conditions as well, which has implications for stuff like Snorlax potentially. Like the new Snorlax with Berry, like I could see myself playing this card in that deck because it allows you to wake up from the sleep. But at the same time, it is paying a price though, because you think, oh, well, now Potion is irrelevant. No, Tatemi, calm down. Potion is an item, not a supporter card. This is a supporter card. You cannot play it the same turn. And a lot of times, you know, there's a lot of games where you go for that Professor's Research in the later portion, or you need to play another supporter card, and you are also able to play Potion that same turn. You can't do that with Pokemon Center Lady. That is actually very, very relevant. And I think all in all, it's going to make this card, it's definitely playable, don't get me wrong. I don't know how meta impactful it'll be because you're just healing a little bit more, but it allows more typings to take on the defensive role, which is very, very nice. It just enhances deck building possibilities for different archetypes. So I think it's a fantastic addition to the game because of that. And we got Red. I think Red is, out of the 4 support cards, I think Red is easily the most impactful one because, you know, no matter what, we're always going to be in EX meta, and Red allowing you to deal 20 extra damage to EX Pokemon, it's just going to be the new Giovanni. It's going to replace Giovanni in most decks that would want to run Giovanni. It's going to be playing in decks that would never even think about running Giovanni. And it's going to, yeah, it's just going to have a big, big, big impact because there's a lot of thresholds that are like automatically increased because of the existence of this card. And all in all, I think, I don't know if ever like as a 2-of, maybe we end up in a situation where this card is like as a 2-of, but I have a hard time because Cyrus is still really important. But I think one copy of Red will fit a lot of decks, more than you think initially, because when you queue into the ladder, like it feels like 90% of the matchups, especially now that there's going to be a ranked ladder, people are going to be bringing in the EX Pokemon. And this thing, it's going to be very, very important and going to be shaping the metagame in one way or another. So keep an eye out for this card if you don't have it in your radar already. And perhaps the card that most people have been freaking out about because they haven't really been using logic properly. I mean, that sounds very condescending. I'm gonna take back that statement. You know, they just haven't been thinking. Let's go with that. Team Rocket Grunt is not a good card, guys. Okay, flip a coin. I saw a comment saying, "Oh, the game is over. We got a new version of Misty," and I nearly had a heart attack. Like I opened my Pikachu video. I looked under the comments, and one of the recent comments, "The leaks happened, and we got a new Misty," and I was ready to just take my computer and throw it out the window. I was like, for a second, I was like so mad, and then I opened this, like, oh, okay. It's like, okay, yeah, your boy Timmy overreacted a little bit. Team Rocket Grunt says, flip a coin until you get tails. For each heads, discard a random energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. This is trash. All right? Why is this trash? 50% of the time, this card is going to be doing nothing. 50% of the time, this card is also going to be doing... Like, that other 50% of the time, I'd say like 80% of the time of that 50% is going to be doing nothing as well. Because... taking away one energy from a specific Pokemon, comparing this to Beedrill, why am I excited for Beedrill's ability and not this? Quite simply because Beedrill is on an attack. So I can attack something, take an energy from it, and then I can do the same thing the turn after. So I can lock my opponent out of being able to keep building up that Pokemon. This only applies one turn. So there are some scenarios where you can potentially slow something down by going for this. but it's so unreliable. 20 card decks are a thing. Like, you have to justify slots for cards. And I just don't think anybody serious from a competitive standpoint is going to be running a card that is just not really going to be doing much most of the time. Like, especially because when it's like high-end attacks, a lot of times those Pokemon are going to be built up in the back anyways. Okay? So yeah, you could be a situation where they lead off with a Darkrai and you lead off with something and they put energy on it. You play this and you just like take away the energy. And yeah, it's definitely doing something relevant there. It's slowing them down significantly. I think this card will be more prevalent potentially within like all trainer, like 18 trainer card decks. Like Pachirisu, Articuno. Maybe you can justify this card in those decks. But I know the problem is just the payoff is just not quite there for like a card that half of the time will do nothing. Oftentimes in other situations, like if they have sent the Pokemon in and they already have, like if they have an Arceus and they've already gotten 3 energy on it, if you play this, you're literally accomplishing nothing because you're taking away that energy and they just place that energy again. You just prevent them from building up something in the back, but you don't deal with the problem in front. You're not stopping that from continuing to attack you, right? So most often than not, like unless this card is played early on in the match in a key moment and the coin flip goes your way, it's going to be useless. So I think people naturally like have overreacted with this card. They just see a coin flip and energy and like, oh my God, I'm messing again. It's not really the case. Like, don't worry about Team Rocket Grunt. It's not really going to have an impact. It'll be annoying to run into, but the more you climb ranked, the less you'll see this card. The exception being like, you know, decks with like 2 or 3 basics and a bunch of trainer cards. Then you can potentially justify running this. And maybe it does end up being more useful than I initially think, but I do not see it. Logic for me dictates that this card is just not. It's arguably the worst of the bunch, and not going to be meta defining in any sort of way. And yeah, don't expect it to be relevant in tournaments or anything like that, honestly. And then we got all the shiny versions of the cards and the new Pokeball. This is, yeah, I'm going to be cracking some packs because I want this. I need this. I cannot live without this. And I fell into the gacha trap. I know, but I don't care. I want this Pokeball. I need 2 copies of this now. And I will not stop until I get them. Or the game doesn't let me open more packs because of that damn gold limit. So, yeah. I rambled about this for like over an hour. Lots to talk about here. I really wanted to dissect the set and give you guys my impressions on all the cards. And all in all, I still think that overall, grass types. The grass typing is the big winner of this set with both Beedrill and Meowscarada. I don't think it's even close, really, when it comes to the amount of cards that are like very, very much playable and exciting. But every single color, every single typing has something interesting and fun and potentially even obnoxious incorporated. And I'm really eager. Like, this is definitely going to spice things up. I can't wait to play these new cards, combine these new cards with the old cards, and, you know, expand upon deck building. Pokemon Center Lady is a card that I'm really grateful for because, like I said, it opens up deck building possibilities for defensive archetypes outside of stuff like green and blue. And there's, you know, Iono is also something that I really just like. I'm not sure exactly how to evaluate this card until I actually try it out. I can't really say for certain like how impactful it'll be. And red definitely offers tremendous amount of promise, and I have no doubts that this card will be extremely important moving forward. And a lot of very, very pretty art. Like this Clodsire is just absolutely gorgeous. The Tinkaton is beautiful. The Pikachu is just like, why did they go so hard with this? Like, I just do not. This should be illegal. And then we got the shiny versions of the cards as well that we can aim for too. Not gonna lie, a lot of them are just ugly because I've never been a huge shiny Pokemon fan. But I guess Wugtrio looks a little bit better in blue. And I don't mind green Beedrill either. Like, I cannot lie, I don't mind that one bit. And the Donzo is actually really funny. Like, it's got this smug face. Like, he's really, really confident in himself, despite needing 4 energy to attack, which is quite interesting. So that is my set review. Let me know what you guys think. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? What are you most excited for out of the set? Like I said, for me, grass typing is the clear winner here, and I cannot wait to try out Beedrill, and I cannot wait to try out anti-meta Meowscarada. That's going to be really, really exciting. And all in all, really, really nice mini set. Going to give us a lot to work with for the month of April, and I'm really stoked. Tomorrow you're getting a regular gameplay video, and then on Friday, throughout the weekend, we're going to be uploading and streaming. We're going to be cracking all those packs, everything. That's why I haven't streamed this week so far. I haven't announced it yet, but I'm going to be doing I'm basically going to be aiming to stream 3 days a week because I want to keep the quality uploads with YouTube. I do want to record a lot more, but I don't want to stop streaming either. So I think the sweet spot for me to land with is 3 days a week streaming, and I'll be releasing an official schedule. Basically, it's going to be Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. That's my initial plan, though maybe I have a change of mind with that distribution. But that's what I'm going to be going with, at least for the beginning. But this week, it doesn't apply because it's the new expansion, and I'm going to be there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So it's going to be exciting. Hopefully, I get to see you there on either Twitch or YouTube. And I'm going to stop rambling. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think about my takes and about the expansion in general. What Pokemon would you like for me to build a deck around first? Or next, you decide. Leave a comment down below, and we'll see what we can do. that wasn't cringe at all. Appreciate you. I was not talking 1 hour and 11 minutes. Oh God, podcast. You got a podcast today. Hopefully you enjoyed. That was all day. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.